Mhm. Well, it's good to see you here this evening. And tonight I'm going to be talking about 10 secrets of successful relationships. I call them secrets, but you already know everything I'm going to say, but perhaps in a different way. So that I'm not going to share anything that's really unfamiliar to you. But the secret is discovering that these things can be really helpful to our relationships. And they're all things that you are probably already doing. But when we know how to do them intentionally, they can be an extra big blessing to all of our relationships, not just our couple relationships. This seminar that I'll share tonight, when we first learned about this idea, was one of the most useful things that we have ever learned to build our own relationship. And it's helped me in my relationship with my children, friends, colleagues, whoever I meet, even people at the checkout in the grocery store. These ideas help us to build healthy relationships wherever we are, when we are mindful of these things and intentional about it. And as a family therapist, I often share these ideas with the families and couples that come to me. This time we're talking about things in a couple context, but everything that I'm saying is applicable to every other relationship, just adjusting the way that you share the love connection with them. So Jesus told us, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says something very interesting. All the laws and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So when we really look at that, what Jesus is saying is loving God and loving others. They are the two most important principles, and they give the context, the framework on which we can understand the laws and the prophets. Because without love, it will all tumble down on the ground. And that is because God is love, and all the love that we have first started in his heart, and we love because he first loved us. And just as Jesus tells us to love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind, we can love each other with our heart and soul and mind. And this means intentionally, with authentically, and to understand the spiritual context in which we relate to one another. In the beginning, perfect relationships involve loving togetherness. So God created Adam and Eve, and he poured his love into their hearts. They had no idea what love was until God loved them as his precious children. And then they could love each other and love God back. And this created a positive, loving cycle. God loves them, they love each other, they love God back. And that is a wonderful place to be. The problem is the sin came into the world and messed things up and broke us apart and tries to divide us. The first thing that happens when Eve gets tempted is that it divides Adam and Eve from each other. They blame each other. It divides each of them from God, or God is always there for them, but they feel they can't connect so freely with him anymore. So we see that things go wrong when relationships start to get damaged. And when we have sin and brokenness in the world, then we make mistakes. And it's so easy for us to look at the other person's mistakes and say, hey, look at you, you need fixing. You've got this big black spot in your life. And then we go, wait, what about you? I mean, you've got some black spots in your life too. And when we do that, it doesn't bring us closer together. It pushes us further apart. And actually, we need to remember what our job is. As we do this, as we push each other apart and blame, we hurt each other. And when we don't feel so loved by each other, it's harder for us to feel loved by God. And so this blaming and shaming and attacking one another, rather than loving and caring, destroys all kinds of our relationships. So Paul says this in Romans: when you criticize someone, you condemn yourself. Judgmental criticism of others is a well-known way of escaping detection in your own misdemeanors. But God isn't so easily diverted. He can see through all these smoke screens and hold you responsible for what you've done. You didn't think, did you, that just by pointing your finger at others, you would distract God from seeing all your mistakes and from coming down on you hard? Or did you think that because he's such a nice God, he would let you off the hook? You better think this one through from the beginning. God is kind, but he's not soft. And in kindness, he takes us firmly by the hand and leads us into radical life change because he loves us. He loves us too much to leave us like that. And he wants to help us. But when we start to criticize others, it messes things up. Instead, we can focus on loving each other. And we were created to love one another, to be there for each other, to be loving companions and support. And someone else is designed to deal with our sin, and that's Jesus. And when we let him deal with our brokenness, and we're growing in relationship with him, and he is working on our broken parts in his time, then we can focus on loving each other well. Because when we actually love each other well, it's much easier for God to deal with our brokenness. When we're in a loving relationship, it's so much easier for us to make changes in a loving space than in a space where we feel criticized and judged. So let's do our job of loving well, let God do his job of forgiving and growing and healing us well, so that we can, even in this broken world, restore loving relationships with God and each other. So one of the reasons we're here, like Jesus said God said at the very beginning that the one thing that wasn't good was that man was alone. And so he made Eve so we could be together, because togetherness makes us stronger, makes us happier. And we can think about how can we take away the aloneness of the people around us and help people to experience more of God's love through our relationships with them. It's interesting to note that everything we do in a relationship will either weaken it or strengthen it, because if you do nothing, you are ultimately weakening the relationship. You're not building the love connection with the other person. So everything we do is either building a love connection with them, strengthening our bonds, strengthening our relationships, or we're weakening them and damaging them. Interestingly, the more caring connections we make with the other person, even small things that I talked about at my seminar in January, just the little things that we do often, then we build up caring connections, thicker bonds, and actually the less likely we are to argue together, because the more that we are showing love and care and appreciation for each other, we find that people don't argue so much. And if they do have a conflict or a disagreement, it's much easier for them to find peace again. So in the New Testament, Paul describes love, and love is more than just a feeling in your heart. As the song says, love isn't put in your heart to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. Now, that's a very old song, so if you don't remember it, it's probably even before my time. But love, says Paul, is the things we do for one another. And he gives many instructions in the New Testament about these one another's, these loving actions that build community and are also good for any healthy relationship. So he said, mourn with those who mourn, accept one another, show love to one another, thank one another, focus on each other, honor one another, encourage one another, help each other to feel safe, take care of each other, value each other, and bear one another's burdens. And these are all practical ways that we show love. These are the 10 secrets, really, the 10 things that you all know about that can help to build stronger relationships. If you want to take a picture of a slide, this is a good one, because this is a list that I keep in my head that reminds me when I'm with people to think, which of these dimensions of love do they most need in this moment right now? And how can I be part of meeting that need in their life? The opposite of love, we sometimes think, is hate, but really it's loneliness and disconnection. The opposite of comfort is perhaps being hurt and judged for our sadness. The opposite of acceptance is being rejected, abused, criticized, ignored, shamed, discouraged, made to feel afraid, being put down, and being abandoned. these things hurt very, very deeply. And when we experience those, we feel very alone. We can feel very sad. We can begin to have a kind of relational panic in our heart. And when we feel that little bit of panic, and we get stressed, it's much harder for us to stay calm when there's a conflict or something that bothers us in the relationship. It makes us, we work from an uncertain, insecure basis when we're experiencing things on the lonely side. And the love side creates a more secure attachment for our love relationships. You can think of it like this. This is just a very simplified system. When I feel cared for by you, and that also may help me feel cared for by God, then we have oxytocin is released into our brain, washing our brain, and it helps us to feel good, warm, cozy in the relationship, warm towards others. It helps us to listen better to others, to empathize with them, and put empathy into compassion, which is an action that responds to the feelings we see in the other person. So that helps us to care well for the other person. And when we care well for others, then the oxytocin is produced in their brain and they are better able to care for us. And so we can have this lovely love cycle going on in our relationship, because the more I feel cared for, the more I can care for you. And the more you feel cared for, the more likely we will share this care together. And that creates a positive context for relationship. There's also a distress cycle. And when we don't feel cared for by others, and maybe that also makes us wonder whether we're cared for by God, although God is caring for us all the time. But if someone has somehow misrepresented God and we don't feel cared for by the God that they have in their picture, then we can become very stressed. Cortisol and adrenaline are released. And then when they're in our brains, they're there to make us protect ourselves, to run away, to fight, to take care of ourselves and defend ourselves. And when our body wants to do that, it doesn't want to think about anybody else. It just says, hey, take care of you. You're vulnerable. And so when those hormones are released, we don't listen very well. It's very difficult to empathize with others and be compassionate. We're just focused on what we want, what meets our needs, what will take care of us. So when that's happening, we're much more likely to hurt others by what we do and say, stress them out. And then when they're stressed, they don't want to take care of us either. And we create a distress cycle. And it's kind of important to understand these are two very simplistic ways of describing what happens, but stop at times, think, hey, which cycle am I caught up in? And if you recognize you're caught up in the distress cycle, how can you choose to stimulate the comfort cycle and take things down again and back into a calmer and loving place? And the 10 things I will share with you today will help you to move from the distress cycle into the calmer cycle, the comforting cycle, the compassionate cycle, where you can begin to feel close and loved and safe again. So those things are important. I will be talking about relational needs, and these are all things that a relationship needs to help it flourish. But don't feel if you have a need that you're needy. No, you're not. We all need these things to build healthy relationship. It's how our brain is wired for relationships. It's just one way of talking about them. You can call them relational bonders or something else, but I like to remind people that we all need this. I need it, you need it. And when we are aware that helping to meet your relational needs can strengthen our relationship, then that can be a useful concept. Want to watch
Babies this
through this
young
video about
are
a baby.
extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the
Very loud for
social
some reason.
interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So that video is just a small clip to show what happens when, even though the mother is there present, the mother is not connecting with the baby, not meeting the needs, not responding in the normal way. And that baby goes into panic mode. And that's kind of what happens to us even as adults when the people that we love don't respond warmly to us, or we feel that they ignore us or even reject us or abandon us. We start to panic in our heart, just as the baby does. And the baby realizes very quickly that mommy isn't engaging in the way that she normally does. It only takes a few seconds for that baby, young as she is, to realize this relationship isn't what it was before, and I'm worried. And that actually happens in different kind of ways, but also similar ways as we grow older and have our adult relationships. So it's really powerful to see how quickly a child can become distressed when the connection, the needs are not being met in the relationship. So focused attention is really important in relationships. And Paul says, don't look to your own interests, but to the interest of others. And that's one of the starting places, is giving other people our attention, our partner our attention, so that we really listen to them, wanting to learn more about who they are so we know how to love them better. And here are some ways we can show attention to a spouse or a child or a friend. Listen to their story about the happiest moment in the last day, week, or month. So tell me about your day. Tell me what was the best thing. Let's celebrate that together. Give eye contact. Don't be looking at your phone. Help people to see you're fully engaged, listening to them. Sum up what they say. That's a really useful thing to do. And it might sound a bit weird, but when we show that we've heard, so you're saying this and this happened, that sounds really, discouraging, or that sounds wonderful. It really lets them know that we are giving them our full attention. We're really listening, and that lowers their distress as well. Spend time with the people that you love, fully immersed in what they love to do. Sometimes this is tricky. My husband's really into paragliding, and I really cannot be fully immersed in that, but at least I do something like pay for his lessons. So I show that I'm interested in what he's interested in, even though I'm not even going to go there and watch. Sometimes we need to invite people to pay attention to us and say something like, you know what, I need to know you're really listening to me. Could you just put your phone down for a minute so, I can really look into your face, because I really need to see how you're responding to me, or something like that. So focused attention is really important because it says, first up, you matter to me. I care about you. I care enough about you to put my ideas and needs and desires aside to focus on yours. And also, hopefully, that will happen in response to me as well. But if we don't give each other focused attention, we won't understand what they're experiencing, what they need from us, and it's harder to feel the loved. Acceptance is being loved even when we've messed up. We will mess up. We are humans. We hurt each other. We make mistakes. And one day I was picking up the children from the school in my husband's car, and I reversed into a car park space at the school. I was sure it was clear when I started to back into there, but somehow in a few seconds, there was a massive, great garbage skip from some building work in the spot. And I have no idea how it got there so fast. And I only realized it was there when I heard the big crash. The car still went, so I drove it home. And fortunately, Bernie had learned to understand these important things that I'm sharing with you today. So when I went and I said, Bernie, darling, I'm really sorry. I just bumped the back of your car. He took a deep breath, remembered what he learned, and told himself, I have to show Karen that she is more important than the car. And I'm glad that he did. So he had to drive around in that car for 2 years before it finally got written off when someone else crashed into the back of it. But people would say, hey, look, Bernie's bumped his car, what was he doing? And there wasn't a sticker to go put on the back that said, well, my wife did this. So he bore my mistake on the back of his car for a couple of years, humbly and lovingly, because he accepted me even when I messed up. So it's when we've messed up that we really need the most acceptance. Someone just to say, I love you anyway. And that can be tough, but it's amazing when someone does that for you. You are more important than your mess. And that's what God says to us. All of these things, these dimensions of love, he shows us and teaches us through that how to do this for each other. You might need to say to someone, you know what, when I do this, I really need to know you still accept me. It's really important to me to know that even when I have messed up and bumped your car, that you still accept me as a person. So yes, I wonder who around you has done something, has messed up in some way and is feeling really bad about it. And I wonder how you can reach out and show them some acceptance, because in those moments, that is such a powerful way to show love, unselfish love. You matter more than the mistake that you made. Respect is being treated with dignity and fairness. And Paul tells us to honor one another above ourselves. And that's treating our spouse or the other person as if they're so special to us. They are a very important person. And lift them a little bit above us, because when we do so, then we look up at them with respect and honor rather than down on them. When we look up at each other and treat each other well, we all get lifted up. We both get lifted up. But when we start to look down on one another, we drag each other down in a really destructive way. So God does this for us. He scoops us up and lifts us up and says, I show you respect, even though you've made mistakes. I love you. I will treat you with dignity and fairness. And Jesus does that so often when he's relating to people in very messy lives. He lifts them up and gives them a new picture of themselves, which they live into, because he has shown them who he thinks they are and restored their lives. So we practice respect by listening carefully to others, to our spouses. We invite their ideas and opinions and listen to them too. We ask before using their things or making plans that involve them. There's so many ways to show respect. We don't do things without their consent, and we treat them as very precious people. Sometimes people may not show us the respect we hope for, maybe because their family did things differently, or their cultural background, or maybe they're just tired or distressed themselves. And you can sometimes remind them. One way that I really like to be shown respect is when you do that. It's actually helpful if you can tell them a time when they did it well and say, you know, when you did that, I felt so respected by you. That was so powerful to me. So finding a time when they did the action well and saying that was really special to you is very encouraging. Then they know they can do it. You're not saying, not complaining, you're saying you did that then, that was really meaningful. And I'd love it if you could do it again sometime because that was so special to me. Security is helping each other feel safe from risk, harm, and shame. And it's very important to help each other feel safe. Perfect love casts out fear, and in healthy relationships, each other reduces the other person's fears or helps to cast it out. We're helping to make each other feel safe in an ideal space. And that's so important. And there's so many different things we can do that can make other people feel unsafe. So it's how we drive, how we manage our money, whether we lock the doors at night and take care of that kind of security. There's emotional security, not threatening to leave or not hurting each other and not making fun of fears. Because if someone feels afraid, they feel insecure. But many of the fears that we have come from our past experiences. They're not easy to rationalize away and say, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of that. That's not going to hurt you. Those fears are very powerful and they are felt in the whole body. The body feels the fear. And even though the mind might say there's nothing to be afraid of, when the body feels the fear, it's very big and overpowering. So how can we help take care of each other's fears? Now, my husband drives very safely. I, however, have some visual problems, and particularly at night, I don't see very well, and car lights can blind me, and the whole world feels very confused. So Bonnie can be driving safely, but sometimes I don't feel safe because what I see is not safe. And so I learned to not yell at Bonnie and go, slow down. I just reach out my hand and I just squeeze his knee, and we call it the handbrake. So I don't say anything. I just squeeze his leg gently and he knows, oh, Karen's a little bit scared here. I will go a bit slower. And he does. And I really, really appreciate that. I just have to be careful when I get into cars with other men who drive fast. And remember that I can't squeeze their knee in the same way. And I have nearly done that. So I need to be careful. It's become such an automatic reaction to me. But then I usually explain the problem. We have a good laugh. So appreciation is very important, thanking each other. And you have no idea how helpful it is to thank each other, because when we say thank you and appreciate one another, we lower the risk of conflict. We feel valued, we feel appreciated. It lowers our resentment. Whenever we feel thankful, we can't also feel anxious. So it's really good for us. And whenever we thank someone, we feel good too. It's not just helping them. Whenever we share gratitude, we also have a glow. So Paul says, I thank my God every time I remember you. And I wonder how our relationships would be different if we thanked each other so much more. We can thank each other at least once a day for something good, however small, and look for something we can appreciate in the other person. So thank them, say, I really appreciate it when you do this or when you did that. Thank you so much for putting your clothes in the laundry basket. Thank you so much for getting the dinner out of the freezer or filling the car up with fuel. Just find as many things as you can to thank your spouse for, and others too. Do you know, appreciation is far more powerful way to shape behavior than nagging people, because when someone thanks me, I think, oh, that felt nice. I happily want to do it again. But if someone nags me or complains, I start to feel resentful, like, don't feel like doing it now. And I can get a bit grumpy. But appreciation always makes us feel positive. Find fun ways to say thank you. Post-it notes, a message on your phone, use some lipstick on the mirror, and just be really creative about how you say thank you to each other. Sometimes people forget to say thank you because they're busy, their minds are filled with other things, or their family never said thank you very much. It was just not part of their communication system. So sometimes you might have to say, what did you like best about the dinner? And just kind of give a little reminder, or, you know, which dress do you like best? Do you prefer me in this one or this one? And just kind of find other ways to get some, to elicit some appreciation and just remind them a little bit. Being valued is showing or telling each other how special the relationship is. God said to Jesus, "You are my son whom I love. With you I am well pleased." And Ellen White says that God says this over each one of his children. So you and I, he says, "You are my son, my daughter, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." Even though here we are, broken and messed up a bit, he says, "You give me pleasure. I love you and you bring me joy." So how do we tell each other how special you are? You say things like, "I'm so glad I married you. It's wonderful being your wife. You're such a great husband. I love this about you." Or even tell your kids. A few years ago, I was with my grandson, who was then 3. And I thought, I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to tell him all throughout the day how much I value him. And so I kept saying these things to him about how much I love to be with him, to read his stories to him, to spend time with him, to play with him, go for walks with him, and that it was really special for me to spend some time with him. And in the afternoon, maybe because we were making cakes, I'm not sure, but he turned to me and he said, "Grandma, I wish you always lived with us." And I thought, wow, I have been showing how much I value him, not expecting anything in return. And a 3-year-old can turn around and value me and say, "I wish you lived with us," which was, I thought, for me, a very valuing statement of his relationship with me. And I thought, you know what, if a 3-year-old can do this, the rest of us can learn something by letting each other know this relationship is precious. I'm so glad you were born into our family. This is, I just so much enjoy being your mother. It's so much fun spending time with you. So those things are really helpful. So tell someone how important they are to you in a simple, fun, or creative way. You could have their photograph on your keyring, on your phone, make something tangible that you have on your desk. And when they see it, they know that you're letting the whole world know that they are special to you. Celebrate their special moments. Be there for their concerts, their whatever they're doing at school, or show up when they're going through a special time, and maybe an honor at work or something. Celebrate those amazing moments when things go well for them, and find a way to celebrate in a fun way, whether it's just opening a bottle of their favorite juice, or making their favorite cake, or going out to dinner, or just having balloons or something. Just do something fun to celebrate their special moments. Kindness is really important. It's really at the heart of everything we do in loving relationships. All of these actions need to be motivated by kindness. And kindness can actually grow, even if we don't feel like being that kind and we're a bit grumpy. When we start to do kind things for the other, love grows. And I've seen that so many times in so many ways. And the reason is that when we start to do kind things for them, we have like an oxytocin burst in our brain, and also that happens in their brain. And then we start to feel connected. It starts to turn things around and can bring some healing and joy and love back into it. But it needs to start somewhere. And in the Bible, we love because God first loved us. And that's how all of us learn to love. God's love pouring into the world, into our parents, and hopefully it works well when our parents love us and our love grows. And children who have the first few years in relationships where, for whatever reason, they aren't shown that love, they have what we call adverse childhood experiences, will find it very difficult later on. They have to learn in different ways how to show loving kindness. It's not so innate because that part of their brain wasn't developed so well when they were younger. So kindness to children, building a bond with them, building bonds with each other is important. And every time we are kind in what we say and do, we are building, really strong bond of love between us. So do small things, kind things for others as often as you can, because that really helps love to grow. And I've seen that, as I said so many times. Speak kindly, show affection, give thoughtful gifts, think about the 5 love languages. If you're not sure, Google that and do a little assessment to find out what's your love language and what is the love language of your your spouse, your partner, your child, whoever it is you want to show love to. And then find ways that you can show them love in their special ways, because that's really wonderful. You might even say, you know what, I could really use a hug right now. Please hold me. Give someone a bit of a reminder about how you might like to experience kindness and care, and ask for it. And don't be afraid to ask. You know, we all have these important needs, and sometimes we feel we can't ask for what will really help us in our relationship, but give it a try. Ask for small things, or just do it for the other person anyway, and see if changes will grow over time. Encouragement is being supported towards our personal goals. And encouragement means to give heart to. And the balloon is there because when someone is feeling discouraged, it's like their heart is floppy like a balloon. And when we encourage them, it's like we fill it up with a boost that says, hey, I know you can do this. Let me help you. I'll do the dinner while you write some of your essay. I'll support you. I'll drive in the car with you while you're practicing and learning before you pass your test. So Paul encourages us to encourage one another towards the goals they have for their life, not our agenda for them, which is not encouraging at all. So find out what their goals are and help them reach them. Show that you believe in them and empower them. So do you even know what the goals and dreams are of your spouse, and also your children or others? So I found out recently that my husband wanted to study, do more paragliding. He's done some paragliding training, and he wants to do a bit more, and he wants to go to Morocco and see if he can get a certificate in it so that he can do it in England. And so I can help him towards his goals and dreams by saying, yes, you go and do that, and let me pay for the training. And he's also working towards a marathon, and I can say, yes, go and buy some better running shoes. Go and buy the socks that you need to help protect your feet when you run, and be behind the ideas that they have, support them towards their goals, because it's so wonderful when you have someone cheering you on the sidelines of life, and they aren't jealous at your accomplishments. They're just there to say, hey, I'm going to cheer for you because I know this is important to you, and I want to see you do it well and reach your goals. Comfort is being soothed when life is tough and painful. And Paul tells us to mourn with those who mourn. Sometimes you just have a bad day. Sometimes there are times of great loss and distress in our lives. But when we have people who will be sad with us, it helps us get through the bad days and the really, really tough times. Just knowing someone is there for you is huge. They did a study with some doctors who worked in cancer care, and they were taught a 45-second welcome message to the patients that come into their care who are obviously quite distressed. And they say to them, you know, cancer is different for everyone. Every journey is unique, but we want you to know that whatever happens on your journey, everybody here in this unit is on your side, and we are here for you, and we will be here for you no matter what. Something like that. It was a very similar kind of statement. And they found that the people who came to their unit needed much less care. They healed better. They were more positive. Lots of things went better just because they knew they had this message that our team is here for you no matter what. That really reduced their distress and helped in an amazing way. And we can comfort each other in small ways. You can make someone's favorite drink or food, listen to the story of their day or their bigger story of their grief. Know what comforts people. Hugs, talking, their favorite food, walk, fun, a distraction. I once asked my youngest son, when you've had a really bad day, Joel, what can I do that would really make you feel comforted? And he said to me, well, it's when you make a big mug of hot chocolate, and then you put squirty cream on it, and then chocolate sprinkles, ching, 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 and then you put a chocolate flake in it as well, and you give me a chocolate chip cookie. Whoa, chocolate overload. I like chocolate, but I would struggle with that much. And I never knew that. So I then knew when he came home and he'd had a rough day, I would say, do you want that hot chocolate? And he would go, yeah, that would be great. And so knowing what comforts each other is good. Sometimes you might say, you know what, Mum? No, I just want to chat or just play a funny game with me. And that's really important too. So when people are distressed in families, I often make comfort menus with them, and we write down all the things that they could do that would comfort one another as a couple or as a family. And they might put, yeah, I like comfort food for me is this kind of soup and some homemade bread. And I like hot chocolate. And the other person might say, well, I like apple and cinnamon tea. And another one might say, well, I just like it if we can watch a funny movie, and make a list of all those things, because every day it might be different, and add new things to it. But comfort is more than just wiping up tears with tissues. It's distraction, it's being there, it's giving them caring. Oxytocin in whatever way is great for them, whether it's hot chocolate or a hug or a listening ear. Sometimes we have to kind of nudge people. They don't know we've had a hard day. And we might have to say, you know what, I've had a really hard day. And it'd be so lovely if you would make dinner, or we could get a takeaway or something to help me feel better, or just sit and listen to me. And when I finish telling you about my day, don't try and fix me. Just give me a big hug. I often say that to Bernie, and then he knows he just needs a big hug, and it helps him to listen better. Support is helping each other with challenging tasks. And you know what? One of the things that most families fight about the most is the washing up, whether it's the dishwasher or whether it's hand washed, and how it's done and how it's dried, how it's rinsed, who does this, who does that. So if that's what you argue about a lot, think about a different way of managing the situation and appreciate one another for what you do, or do it together, or make it fun or something. So Paul invites us to bear one another's burdens, and that says share your chores, do things together, because that lowers your stress and makes you feel supported and connected. So we can anticipate when someone needs help and they've got a difficult job to do, and be willing to be involved cheerfully, to say, let me do this with you. I know you hate washing the windows. Let's do it together. Or let's clean the car together, or do the weeding. Or you can say, I've got 30 minutes. What's the most helpful thing I can do for you? And then just do it. These things can really build and grow love when we feel supported. This is one of the most important things. Bernie knows if Karen gets a bit grumpy, she needs some help. Just ask her what you can do. And he does that. And I've learned to ask him more clearly for help when I need it, rather than get grumpy. Sometimes I might have to say, I'm struggling with this. Please, can you help me? Or we need to fix this. When will be a good time to do it together? But doing things together is a really helpful way of bonding, feeling supported, feeling connected, and having a good sense that we can do stuff together well. And that's always good for a couple. So I wonder what your top 3 relational needs are, because they're different for all of us. All of these things are important in every relationship, but knowing what your partner's top 3 things are, your spouse or your child or your colleague, can be really helpful, because then you can be efficient in how you meet their needs. One family that learned about this said, we're going to meet every one of these needs in our children every day, just to make sure. That sounds like a lot, but quite often it's just a phrase that says, you know, say something encouraging to them. If they feel afraid, help them to feel safe. Tell them you value them. Offer to help them. Just listen to them for a few minutes when they come in from their work day or their school day. Say thank you to them. Give them a hug. These things take just a few moments, like my seminar in January on little time, lots of love. You can do these things really in very short time, but they can make a powerful difference. In healthy relationships, we try to meet each other's needs to show love in these different dimensions. And there's many more, but these are the top key ones that we've discovered. And we let other people meet our needs too. It's mutual. It should be a two-way thing between adult partners, unless one of them is ill or very busy with a topic. And then you might say, well, I'll just help you for a bit to help get through that busy time. And love often anticipates needs and meets it before the other person realizes they have it. So you buy toilet paper before you run out. You make the meal before everybody's starving. You anticipate that someone is going to have a need, and then you meet it. And I know I feel powerfully loved when Bernie has anticipated something that I might need that I had forgotten about or wasn't aware of. And he goes out and he gets it from me. He says, Karen, you're going to need this. And I realized you were going to need it. So I've got it already. And then I feel so connected that he thought about me. He anticipated my need. I didn't have to tell him. He was creative and found something that would be helpful. So there's 3 danger signs, and they are self-centeredness, self-reliance, and self-condemnation. And these are things that mess up our ability to meet each other's needs well in a relationship. So self-centeredness says my needs are more important than your needs. So you can give to me, but I won't give anything back. It's all about me. I'm the most important person because I am and so you have to meet my needs. And that's so sad in a relationship when one person is wanting their needs met, but isn't willing to give to the other person. Then there's self-reliance. You know what? I don't need that relational stuff. That's just like weak stuff. If I want anything like that, I will just get it for myself because I'm like a big guy. I'm independent and I can do this. And then there's self-condemnation. I would like this stuff. I would love someone to do these things for me, but you know what? I don't really deserve it. So if you're nice to me, I'm just going to feel guilty. And these things get in the way of experiencing love. So in the story of the prodigal son, we see this in sharp, it brings it really clear to me. So the prodigal son starts off by being really self-centered. My needs are more important than yours. I just want the money now. So you can just give me the money, but you won't see me again. I'm just going to go and do my own life. And then he's self-reliant. He tries to live his own life his way. I don't need you. I don't need my family. I can do everything on my own. And then he finds himself with the pigs and he's like, oh, I'm such a mess. I'm not even worthy to be my father's servant and take care of his sheep. But he remembers that his dad was a really loving dad. And even the little guy who helped with the sheep had good food and clothes and a warm place to sleep at night. And he didn't have any of those. And so he realizes the most important thing is just to go back home and see what happens. And so he makes his way back home. And what is so amazing is when the father sees him, the father has been paying attention to him all along, looking for when he's coming. And as soon as he sees him, he runs towards him and shows him acceptance with a big, big welcoming hug and a smile. And that's also affectionate and comforting for the poor young man. And the poor young man then feels encouraged. Wow, my dad still loves me. Maybe there's some hope. Maybe I can still be a shepherd. But the dad says, no, I've got a better idea. And he covers him with the white robe and lets him know he's special, puts a ring on his finger, says, you are mine. You have come back. You're part of this family. You have security. You have support. And that young man knows that the father has met all of those relational needs. And the father, I guess, as God knows we have all these needs. And he thinks, if I meet all of these needs, there's no way this young man is not going to feel my love. I'm just going to pour everything I can into his life to show him how loved he is. So that's a really amazing example for me of how love puts these things into action to heal all the pain in the relationship. I discovered that sometimes when I get grumpy and I'm a bit complainy and maybe hangry, sometimes I'm hungry for relational connection. And like that little baby, when I'm not getting it, I might be a bit grumpy and pouty or whatever. And I have to recognize, hey, I'm feeling out of sorts. What is it that I need? What am I hungry for? So I can actually go and tell Bernie, you know what, I'm feeling out of sorts and I've realized it's because I need this. Please, could you help me? And he goes, yeah, of course I can. I'll do that for you. So I've learned to identify my needs by going through the list in my head and saying, okay, what is it I need this time? Or if Bernie is struggling, I will think, I wonder what he needs most from me. Or what does my child need? Or my colleague? Or maybe even the tired looking lady who is putting my stuff to the checkout, and maybe she needs a word of encouragement or appreciation. And so I give that to her. So when babies' needs are not met when they are born, like the little baby, if that baby experiences that unmet need experience every day, as the man said, this is really ugly when those needs are not met. Because when they experience neglect, pain, distress, sadness, aloneness, and abuse, they start to think, I'm not important here. What's wrong with me? Maybe if I try harder, they will love me. And when that doesn't work out, they have negative emotions. Like they feel unworthy, distressed, bitter, hurt, sad, and lonely. And when they have all those feelings, then they try to stuff them and soothe them on their own in ways that are not helpful, rather than having their needs met by loving carers and parents. They'll act things out in other ways. As they get older, may develop addictions, eating disorders, manipulate other people, bully them, have perfectionist tendencies, etc., because they're trying to quash and soothe all their negative feelings in themselves in ways that are perhaps not so useful. And this can lead to poor outcomes, less successful relationships, lower achieving, higher incidence of mental illness. And we often call those today the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. And there's a powerful amount of research done into children who experience distress in the younger years and don't have their needs met, and they have very poor outcomes in every aspect of their lives. But when babies are touched, loved, played with, given attention and eye contact, and their needs are met from birth, they have healthy thoughts. I am loved, I am special, I can do this. And they feel valued, confident, safe, and thankful. They have positive emotions that help them to flourish. They develop healthy character strengths and healthy behaviors. They are kind, often helpful, considerate, generous. And okay, they're kids and they'll make mistakes, but it's much easier for a child to have healthy behaviors and behave well when they feel loved and happy. We don't make any child behave better by making them feel worse, or any adult either, for that matter. And so when their needs are met and they have these healthy behaviors and emotions, it leads to more positive lives in the long run. So what I shared with you is to help you recognize and identify your own needs in a situation. If you're feeling grumpy or out of sorts, rather than complaining or hitting out at others, stop and think, what's going on here? Go through the list of needs and think, is there something I'm missing? And I wonder how I can have that need met. And it's okay to ask. You wouldn't mind asking for a drink of water, or for the window to be open for fresh air, or to have the heating up if you're cold. And this is just a similar things. It's just, these are the important dimensions of your connected relationship. Find positive and comfortable ways to let your spouse or others know what you're needing. Sometimes I'll say to Bernie, I have a need and only you can help me, or something like that. And then he smiles and he knows I'm going to ask him to do something. So I have a problem and I think you can help me. That's what I say. Yeah. And then he grins and says, yes, I will help you. Wonder what other people might be needing and ask if you are not sure. So, hey, it sounds like you could use a hug or some encouragement or some support. Is that right? And let them talk about what they need. And if you let them know you're willing to help meet that need, and they tell you what it is, then that's a really wonderful thing when someone notices that you need an extra help. Listen for clues to what their needs are and what they say, what they do. Oh, I'm fed up with this. I just feel like I'm going to give up. Maybe they need support, some appreciation, some encouragement. All those things might be what they would need to help them carry on. So listen underneath what they say when they sound distressed and think, I wonder what would help them feel better. And every time you meet someone else's need, you're actually strengthening your relationship. Another bond is linking you together. And that strengthens your bond, your connection, when we do all these good things. But sometimes when we do something really like hurtful to the other person, it's like we have a pair of scissors and we chomp through all of that good stuff that we've done. And it takes much longer to build it the next time once we've betrayed trust. But know that every time you do one of these things, you are helping to build the relationship. And so I wonder what 3 things you will do this week to strengthen your special relationships, because the more people feel cared for, the less likely they are to argue with you, and the more likely they are to care for you back. And so we can build up those connections. These are all things that you already know how to do. You already probably know the Bible verses that talk about these things. You have the skills to do them. And it's matching what you know, what you can do, with what the need of the other person is, in a wonderful way to build that bridge of connection. Here are some things people might say, and we can listen for the needs underneath them. Like this might say, I need some encouragement, some support. I don't want to go to school ever again. Again, this child might want some support, some listening, some attention, some encouragement. Rather than someone say, of course you've got to go to school. You can't say things like that. Stop and listen, and just listen to what the needs are. And say, it sounds like you really need some encouragement, or you need some comfort, like that was a really bad day. Let's comfort you. I can't believe you did that without asking me, is like someone needs respect. And so they're saying, I need respect, and we can respect them. Will you always love me? Is perhaps an insecurity. Maybe they need affection. Maybe they need to feel safe. Maybe they need to feel special. Stop driving so fast. That's a fear. So they would need to you to take care of their fear and help them to feel safe again and secure. So Lara left a mean message on my Facebook page, or won't be Facebook anymore. I'm sure that's like really old fashioned now, I'm told. But so Lara left a mean message. And your child may need comfort, may need some encouragement, may need to feel respected and lifted up again, because that has damaged their sense of dignity. I'm so ugly may need some encouragement, some appreciation, some love, some listening. I'm tired of being the only person who ever tidies up. They may need some respect. They may need some support. Was the dinner okay then? Someone's asking for a bit of appreciation. They want to know that you enjoyed it and that you're grateful for what they did. No one will ever want to speak to me again. And someone feels very discouraged, maybe shamed. They need to be respected, need to be comforted, need to be lifted up and valued, and know that you will never leave them. I'll never get a job. They might need some, again, encouragement, some security, some appreciation for their efforts to try and get a job. So just think about what they might need in that context. So those are some ways that we might listen underneath what people are saying, not just on the surface, but what's really in their heart when they say these things, that we can listen to and help to meet their needs when we understand. And finally, this is my prayer that Paul also prays, which I think just suits this situation so well. This is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight by learning about these relational connections and relational needs, so that you may be able to discern what is best, how you can love each other really well, and can be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes from Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. And that fruit is also reminds us of the fruit of the Spirit, that when we do these things, we create relationships that people feel love and joy and peace and patience and goodness and kindness and all those good things. By loving and meeting each other's needs, we can also live out the fruit of the Spirit in our caring relationships with each other's. And so this is my prayer, that something you've learned here today, you can take away and put into practice where you are, and just start small, being aware of the needs. Just say little things here and there, do what you can, and see how that might start to grow and fan love and strengthen the bonds between you. And know that even if you do it for a person you're never going to see again, like the person who's at the checkout, and you meet their need, whenever we do so, we're showing them a little glimpse of heaven and a glimpse of God's love. And so whenever we have the opportunity to do these things for children, for the people around us, we are spreading God's kingdom in a world that is broken, and saying, I care, and I want to show you a little glimmer of God's love through the way that I will treat you today. So thank you for listening. I hope that there was something that you gained from this. And if you want to, now we can have some comments and some questions. And these will not be on the recording.